Rev Annie Milliken is a lifelong UU from the Midwest. She now serves as the parish minister of First Parish in Bedford, Massachusetts. She is also an organizer in Boston with the Boston Immigrant Justice Accompaniment Network. She lives in Jamaica Plain with her partner Lucas, their kiddo Moira, who you might have seen earlier today, and their housemates Elizabeth and Christy. You might find Annie at a Showing Up for Racial Justice meeting or at a small evening service at Hope Central Church. Welcome, Annie.
So, when I was in 7th grade, I came into the kitchen and I told my mom something that completely shocked her. I told her I was going to join the Parkside Junior High School cross-country team. And this completely shocked her because I hated running. Like, I don't know if you all, when you were growing up, if any of you had to run the mile run in physical education for presidential fitness testing, but I know that I did. I see some nods, yeah. Growing up in Illinois, I had to do that, and I would dread it the entire year, so my mom could not understand why I was joining the junior high cross-country team. She told me she didn't think I could run that far, but she really just didn't understand the power of peer pressure on a 13-year-old girl. And my 3 best friends were joining the team, so there was no way that I was going to be the odd one out going into the big scary world of junior high school. So I joined the team, and sure enough, I was so slow that in my first race, my mom thought I had gotten lost. I had not gotten lost. I just was slow. But over time I started getting better, because when you do something that you've never done regularly, you get better, right? And one thing I would do to kind of get better, I would pick out somebody to kind of run with for a race. I'd kind of see someone who was about my pace, maybe just a little faster than me, and try to keep pace with them, right? So I would do that technique, and we had this one race, and I remember it was a lot of cornfields, because I grew up in central Illinois, but it's a lot of cornfields, flat cornfields. And I had a new running buddy that day, and she was an 8th grader, and I was a 7th grader, and I hadn't really noticed that she was about the same pace as me, but I thought, well, she seems to be, so I just ran with her for that race, and that went pretty well. And so next race, I thought, hey, I'm going to try to keep my eye on her again. And this race was a different terrain, though. It was in the woods, and it was like a lot more hilly. We do have some hills in Illinois. And so it was a harder terrain, and I was like, okay, well, we got this. And so I was running with her, and I was thinking, man, I am so tired. This is so much harder. I don't know why. Just like maybe it's the woods and the hills, and there weren't as many people along the course. Usually there's lots of people cheering, but because of the way this course was, there weren't that many people cheering and everything. So finally, we emerge from the woods, and we come out onto the grassy field where we're going to go into the chute. And there's someone out there calling out the times here, which you might have all along the way, but he called out something like 16 minutes and 15 seconds or something, and I literally just stopped. Because you have to understand, my previous best time was somewhere between 20 and 21 minutes. I was so shocked by the time it was that I completely stopped, and he started yelling, "You're almost there, finish the race!" So I stumbled into the finish line, just totally disoriented. And what I learned was that my new running buddy was not the same pace as me. She had been really sick that weekend in the cornfields and had decided to take it easy. And so she had kind of jogged that one. And so I had kept up with her. And then she went back to her running pace the next weekend, but I didn't know any better, so I kept up with her. So the good news is that once I did make that new time, in fact, I was able to get better and better and better at cross country. And this is me in 8th grade. Oh, sorry. That gesture was just me pointing. Thank you. That's me in 8th grade with the little circle and the arrow on the cross country team that went to the state finals in 8th grade. I was one of the alternates. I didn't run in the state finals, but I still felt very proud of myself that I had made it all the way to the top from the girl who they thought was lost in the field because she came in so late. So that's a story about how I accidentally shaved 4 minutes off my cross-country time. And it kind of makes me think about how when I talk about the Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, I tell people that I accidentally helped start a giant organization. And they're like, accidentally? And I'm like, yes. Actually, it was kind of accidentally. And I'm going to tell a little more of that story later. But the Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, which we call BEYOND, the acronym doesn't quite fit the word, but just don't think about it. We call it BEYOND, and that was not the first time that I jumped in way over my head doing some kind of immigration justice work. The first time I did that was in February of 2017. So Trump was newly in office, and I was newly invigorated. I also had a full-time job and an 18-month-old, but wasn't gonna let that stop me. So I signed up to coordinate all of the food for a national assembly for Movimiento Cosecha, an immigrant rights group. Oh shoot, I forgot about my slides. Ooh, I'm not used to using slides, I'm used to preaching. Sorry. You can go, that's BEYOND, celebrating our birthday in December. People are holding birthday candles. They're really just tea lights. There's Cosecha. Okay, you can stop there for now. Thank you. So I signed up to coordinate food for a giant assembly with no catering background, food service background of any kind. And I'm going to tell a little bit about how that went and how we ended up needing to rent an emergency U-Haul and drive around Boston later. But it's not that every single action I do, a thing I've been involved with, has been this giant elaborate effort of hundreds of volunteers. In fact, another time when I didn't really know what I was doing was when a friend and I coordinated this action of disrupting Jeff Sessions when he came to Boston, and this was in November of this past year. And even though we thought we had failed at our endeavor to capture this event because there was no reception in the room, it turns out we succeeded wildly, and there's some of the, oh sorry, I keep gesturing towards it because I'm trying to look at it. Can you go back one? Thank you. And that is the news coverage, one of the many pieces of news coverage of this action, which I will also talk about later. But, okay, now we can go to the next one. Why I bring up all those things, the cross-country race and those 3 examples of justice work, is not because I want you to think, wow, Annie's a really great runner who does justice work, but because all of those things are examples of times when I really did not know what I was doing and managed to do something that, if I had understood what I was getting into, I would have thought was literally impossible. And so I want to talk about how we can do impossible things in our social justice work. Because as Tristan just told us, we're up against just extraordinary challenges, and we need to be able to do these impossible things. So when I think about it, there were 4 root things that helped me to be able to pull off that race. First was that I had been showing up. I had been showing up to practice, right? I had been learning techniques and skills about running. I had coaches. I had people who were inspiring me and teaching me, and I had that running buddy. I had folks I was running alongside with. And that was how I ended up, sorry, go back again. That was how I ended up there on the stage with the cross-country medal from being at the back of the pack. And so I think that that is also how we are going to make sure we're ready for our justice opportunities and for the challenges that are coming our way and have been coming our way. And so I'm going to talk about how those apply to our justice work. And you're going to have an opportunity to share with a buddy. So if you're not near a buddy, just heads up, that will be an opportunity for you as we go through these different elements. And I know that we all are coming from different experiences. And some of y'all maybe have been like doing this work for like decades and decades, since before I was born. And you're like, I have been running these races. I am tired and I am still running them. And some of you may be like, I'm like a couch to 5K person. I just started yesterday. And wherever you are in that mix, I think that these practices are important for all of us, whatever level of skill or experience we have with social justice work. So With that, now we really will go to the next one. We're going to talk about showing up. So showing up, you can't do anything without showing up, and y'all are here, so you clearly showed up to this. But I know you're showing up to other work because I heard you earlier when you were talking about the work that you're doing around, gun violence and Black Lives Matter and the bail fund and all of that wonderful stuff. And so there was no way I would have been able to do any of these things without showing up. It was the fact that I had shown up to an action with Cosecha where we did a salsa shutdown and did salsa dancing in stores, and I had shown up to a fundraising house party for them that I even knew about the opportunity to do the food for the assembly. And then the fact that I did that, I kept doing food with them for a while. Then I got invited to be in a group for immigration justice through showing up for Racial Justice Boston. And then through that, I met an organizer at Jobs with Justice. And then through that, I ended up helping to start our accompaniment network and so on and so forth. It's the showing up that makes it possible to know what's happening. It's the showing up that also causes people to have any trust in you and faith in you. Like, who are you and why would I expect you to be on my team? It's because they've been seeing you. Even if they don't even know your name, if they've been seeing you at meetings or at rallies or at phone banks or whatever it is, they're gonna know, hey, this is someone I can trust. So this is a moment where I want you to find a buddy and just talk a little bit about how have you been showing up for the issues you care about and how do you want to be showing up? And then we'll come back for more up here. The
trying to figure out how much time I can spend on things. Always doing, and also trying to do that in school. Just started middle school this year, so it's been it's been a whole thing. I've just been a learning process for me to actually wrap my head around.
All right. So if you can bring those to a close, and then. Would anyone just shout out where are some of the places that you're showing up for the things you care about?
The Norris Cotton Building here in Manchester has an immigration vigil where we walk around the building 7 times a month.
Immigration vigil. Jericho Walk sounds like. Jericho Walk. Yep. Yep.
I started out canvassing and I thought I would never do that in my whole entire life.
Canvassing. You thought you'd never do that in your life. I love it. Canvassing, so important. Yeah.
Yeah, I live here, but I've shown up in Laconia and Franklin to talk about sanctuary.
Thank you for doing that. Laconia and Franklin to talk about sanctuary. Thank you all. So that is the first piece. You got to go to practice, right? You got to show up. And then another part of that is the skills and strategies that you get, right? Because it wasn't just that I went to cross-country practice every day after school, even when I didn't want to. It was that I was actually learning something there about running and getting, of course, stronger at running. And, it was really those skills that helped me when I was on that course. I was thinking about shortening my strides on the uphill and keeping my gaze the right amount out so I wasn't looking up too hard or shortening my stride. And it's those types of things that can really help us also when we're doing justice work to have those strategies and skills. And so, when I did the work with Movimiento Cosecha for the National Assembly, as I mentioned, I didn't have any food-related skills, really. I mean, I knew some basic cooking, but luckily what I did have a skill in was coordinating volunteers. Have any of you ever coordinated volunteers? Imagine that, some UUs who have coordinated volunteers. So UU ministry, turns out, is great training for coordinating volunteers. So luckily I had some great skills that I could use in that arena of filling out the Google spreadsheet and, you know, talking to the anxious people and reassuring them and like all those skills. When it came to Beyond, there was a really key skill that I'm really grateful I had developed when I was younger, because it's a very hard skill to develop, and that is that I speak Spanish. And I don't speak it fluently, and it really, it's not amazing Spanish, and there's been many snafus, but I speak it well enough that I can really communicate with people, and that I can really build relationships. And so that just came from the fact that I studied it in school, in high school, in college. I studied abroad in college in Chile, and because of that I had a skill that I could bring. But sometimes there are skills in our past, right, that we don't know all of a sudden are going to be the most useful thing we've got. For the sessions action, I do want to talk about that one a little bit because it was kind of interesting. There was a very, very small team of us. A couple, a friend and I we knew Jeff Sessions was coming to Boston. He was coming to speak to the Federalist Society, a conservative lawyer organization. And we saw that one could purchase tickets to this event. And so we thought, interesting. And we decided we were going to send in some folks to this event. And we selected a Methodist minister who we invited if he would do this, because Jeff Sessions is Methodist. And he said yes, he would. And I believe his exact words were, "I will do anything you and Elizabeth tell me to do." So that goes back to the showing up and building relationships. And then we, trained someone on how to do Facebook Live while also recording on a different phone. And we had a jail support team in case they got arrested, and we had a lawyer in case they got arrested, and all these things that we didn't need. They didn't get arrested, which was great. And also the room they were in, it was in a hotel conference room. It didn't have any reception, like not just no Wi-Fi, but like no cell phone reception. So we had done all this in preparation and hope that we'd be Facebook Live streaming this disruptive action, and we couldn't. And so at first we thought, oh, this was a bust. Except there was a bunch of news media there, and they had caught it. We thought, well, we'll see what happens, and hopefully that'll happen. Well, by the time we got to go to a restaurant to debrief, because there was also a rally happening outside that folks were at. That's where me and the co-organizer were, because we didn't go in, we were outside at the rally. By the time we had reconvened to go debrief, there were all kinds of headlines popping up. And so the skills we thought we had needed were not the ones we needed, but then we needed a media strategy, which was something we hadn't thought about as much. We thought a little bit about a social media strategy. We had not really thought through, like, CNN might call and say, like, can I interview you tomorrow? And so we had to really quickly pivot and use some skills that we had and call on some folks who had those skills so that we were able to get ready for that and pull that off. And so that was both exciting and really kind of terrifying. So I share all that to say, I know that you all have skills, right, that you bring to the work you're already doing and that you might be bringing to future work that you haven't even thought of yet. So now we're going to share with our buddies on what skills and strategies do you have for justice work now, and what skills do you want to develop?
Yes, trying to learn Erin DeBacco, who's involved in, oh gosh, I just had her organization. Thank you, Grand Estate Organizing Project, and she lives not far from me in Epsom. She's in Deerfield, and she's really supported our small community group to get going. What her first advice to our group was, build it slowly and build it well, and train yourselves first. So she's been really supportive in helping us get established.
Annie mentioned UU Mass Action earlier, and if it weren't for Laura Wagner, the executive director of UU Mass Action, we would not have had our Story Slam last fall, since literally all we did was copy and paste their model of the Story Slam and apply it to New Hampshire.
Yes, and it was Laura who called that meeting of those faith groups who wanted to do accompaniment. That was Laura, yeah.
Is Elizabeth Wynn, who is your current housemate, and I believe the Elizabeth from the story with Jeff Sessions.
She's the Elizabeth from the story.
Yeah.
Will would do anything that Elizabeth and I told him to do. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. She's the first person that I really worked with directly who inspired me in social justice work, and I just love that I still hear about her regularly. Who's the small UU social justice world. So yeah.
Yeah, I joke that how I came into organizing was that I did an unpaid internship with Elizabeth, but it's actually true. She mentored me into this work, and she's my housemate and also a UU minister. Yes, thank you, Sam.
I've got another one who I was hoping was going to be here today, Ellen Barr. We meet in a sanctuary group every week to prepare for sanctuary, and in a given week, we come up with a problem, and the next week, Ellen Barr's got it solved for us. And the best of it is, she doesn't make us feel bad about it. It's just, okay, I saw that, now what next? You know, I mean, that's the way she is.
I would say being on the social justice, in the social justice committee and the sanctuary committee is like being with mentors and inspirers and teachers and coaches, because it's like we all hold hands together and we get there, and we each have different skills, and somehow we move ahead with
That is a perfect segue, because the next thing I'm going to talk about is running buddies. And so what you were just talking about is exactly that. And you know, I kind of think of Elizabeth as like a running buddy coach mashup for me, because she really has taught me a lot, and she's one of the people I work most closely with often. And to give credit where credit is due, the sessions action was really her brainchild. So running buddies, that was, like, as I told the cross country story, a very key to that physical story about running was that if I hadn't been trying to keep pace with that 8th grade girl who was a lot faster than me, I never would have broken through that time barrier. But it's also just completely true in our justice work. We have to be working with others, and it is those people who we're working with, as you just named, that keep us going. And I could go on for like a million years about that, so I'm gonna not do that. But what I will say, I do want to tell a quick story from the Cosecha gathering about kind of what people, the ways people went above and beyond in that situation. And so we had been, this gathering happened in 3 different locations, just to make it even harder. And we had mostly been using the kitchen at First Parish in Cambridge, the UU congregation in Cambridge, as like our staging area for all the cooking and food. But then they kind of like wanted to use their kitchen on Sunday morning. Weirdos. So they said we weren't allowed to use their kitchen on Sunday morning. And so we had to get everything out, but the Cosecha event ended Sunday lunch, so it wasn't over. And though I had figured out ways to arrange for breakfast and lunch to happen without cooking, I had not thought at all about storage. Where were we going to put all this food? We weren't allowed to keep it at the church. Where were we supposed to put it? This was luckily in February, so it was cold outside. And so I was, running around frantically just all day, I didn't even eat or drink all day. It was terrible. And this other volunteer was like, I know what we can do. We can rent a U-Haul. And I was like, what? She's like, we're going to rent a small U-Haul, and we're going to put all the food in it. It's going to be a refrigerator because it's cold. And I was like, okay, you do it. And so she did. And she rented a U-Haul, and we put all the food inside it, and then we drove it to my neighborhood at like some absurd hour in the evening that was very late, and we left it there overnight. And the next morning, when I went to wake up early to drive the truck with all the food back up for the breakfast location, I was so exhausted. It is the most exhausted I've ever been in my whole life, except for childbirth. So that gives you an understanding of how tired I was. And I just couldn't do it. I was like, I can't get out of bed and drive this U-Haul through Boston. So luckily, my partner, who makes many things in my life possible, got up and he drove the truck. And we had the rest of the assembly, and they had their food, and it was all fine. But it's those kind of running buddies, the ones who are going to go rent you an emergency U-Haul to use as a refrigerator, that are like the best to have on your team. So we can just take a moment to also do a shout out for who are the running buddies that you all want to give a quick shout out to and send some love to.
So my running buddy is Cindy Spring, who was here earlier, had to leave. But she, besides being the chair of our Black Lives Matter committee at Star King, she also, for years before that, was the director of religious education at Star King, and she recruited me to be an RE teacher, which is how I got involved in this crazy faith to begin with. So without her, I would not be here.
I shouldn't say it. Jim is my husband, and he's not only my running mate, but running buddy. What is it called? But I think this church is running buddy for this particular conference.
I want to give a shout out to the rest of the leadership team of UU Action New Hampshire, because I don't think of myself as a particularly sort of out there social justice person, and you all challenged me to at least show up to our meetings and take notes. And I've learned so much
Showing
from
up.
each of you. Yeah.
Well, as I sit there thinking about it, and of course there are a lot of people in my life, but I had a very dear friend who's since passed away. So I have to think about him and realize, what would Nathaniel say? He was a brilliant, brilliant man, and he was always challenging me. And he'd say to me, you know, what do you mean by that, Wayne? So anyway, that was Nathaniel Brooks, and he was part of the an instigator of getting a social justice church at the UU committee at the UU church.
This is all so that we can do the really hard things. The showing up and the skills and the coaches and the running buddies. It's all because we actually really need to do these hard things. Nobody needs to run any certain race or any certain time. That's irrelevant. But the justice work is what we actually need. And I tell myself this story because it helps me to remember that I can believe that these impossible things can happen, because a lot of days I really don't believe, to be honest. Like, a lot of days I'm just like, I don't know why I even had a kid. I have a 3-year-old, and we've ruined the world, and I don't even know if she's gonna have a world. And every day I'm working with these people who are in immigration jail, or their husband's in immigration jail, their brother's in immigration jail, and they're calling and they're like, you have to believe me, he'll be killed if he goes back, you have to help. And there's literally nothing I can do because he didn't pass the interview that the government set up, and there's nothing to be done, and he's just gonna be deported and probably killed. And the stakes are so, so, so high that it's so easy for me to just like wanna lay down and give up. And just like say, I quit. I quit trying to make this world better. I'm just gonna live it out till I'm dead and see you later. But I always am working to remind myself that there is a chance. There is a chance that we could prevent the worst of climate change from happening. There is a chance that we can change this broken immigration system. There is a chance we can prevent gun violence and prevent all these pointless deaths from gun violence. There is a chance that we can shift some of the racial attitudes in our schools and our communities. And I really have to remind myself of that over and over. And so when I tell myself the silly story of how I got better at running when I was a kid, or when I tell myself the story of how, you know, even though I had no idea what I was doing, I managed to help hundreds of people, feed hundreds of people, and now that movement is out there walking across Massachusetts for driver's licenses. And you know, when I think about the Sessions Action, my friend who's a Presbyterian minister, I was talking to her afterwards because we were actually going to try to get some copycat actions basically going in other states. This was right before the midterm elections. But when I called her and was talking to her about it, because she happened to live in one of the states we were kind of looking at, she was like, but you know, one of the women in my Bible study brought up that action. And this was a pretty moderate church, not a particularly progressive church. And she said, wow, I saw this pastor telling Jeff Sessions, I was a stranger and you did not welcome me. And, I think we need to think about that. And I was like, yeah. And so, that gives me hope. Like, if something that somebody does in Boston can then affect somebody, down in Georgia to think about immigration differently, like, that gives me hope. And the last thing I want to show, this is a picture from a birthday party with one of our members of Beyond. He spent his 20th birthday in immigration jail, and this is his 21st birthday party. And these are all people that he has met through his life here in the United States and through Beyond. We were able to pay his bond, and he is seeking asylum in the United States. And when I think about people like him, or people like the new baby who was just born into our network, who was born to a couple who were separated by immigration detention and are now together, having a child together, and they named the child after the woman who hosted them when they got out of jail, a member of our network, so the baby's name is Bela, after Bela who hosted them. And that kind of stuff makes me feel like, okay, we got this. We can make this happen. And so I just encourage you to hold on to your wins that keep you going, and to make sure that you're always working on those 4 elements, making sure that you're showing up, and showing up to the places that you need to be showing up to build the relationships you need, making sure that you are gaining skills you need, or refining those skills you already have and figuring out how they're useful to the movement, because almost any skill is useful to the movement. The third thing, with the coaches, seeking out those people who are going to support your leadership and development and growth and inspire you and push you in the directions that you want to grow. And then, of course, finding those running buddies and finding those folks who are going to throw down with you, who are going to trust you, who you can trust to really make things happen, because it's absolutely necessary that all of us run much faster than we ever thought we could before if we're going to do anything to save this world. Thank you.